Hello and welcome to Just Ship It. I'm Anthony Zoller, and in this episode we are talking with Joe Justice, the owner of Justice Aviation, a flight school at Santa Monica Airport. Yes, that's right, a flight school. Many viewers probably don't have a goal to open up a flight school, but Joe's story is interesting, and in fact, he didn't even have the dream of opening a flight school until his 30s. If you like this interview, you can subscribe to the Just Ship It newsletter on the website and be notified about new episodes. Let's talk to Joe and hear about how he shipped it. Okay, we're here with Joe Justice today, the owner of Justice Aviation. And Joe, I wanted to start with you and how you got into aviation. Did it start as a kid or?
Yeah, the desire to do it started as a kid. Only mostly as a desire. I think I built one model plane at some point for a science fair or something like that. And that kind of sparked an interest. And later, as a young adult, I guess you'd say, in high school, one math teacher taught the ground school for aviation as a substitute for math. And I took that course and was kind of intrigued by it all and decided, for whatever reason, because I had never flown, that I wanted to be a pilot. And as it turned out, though, at my age, when I was ready to get career counseling, the aviation industry was a little different at the time. All the counselors said, well, you cannot be a commercial pilot unless you do a military career. Mm-hmm. So I did a couple years at community college.
And where was this at? Where did you grow up?
It's Fresno, California. Okay. Yeah. And so after a couple years at community college, I started to sign up for ROTC for the Air Force. Okay. They made it rather clear, though, that there wasn't any likelihood, because Vietnam was ending and they were letting go of a lot of pilots. They made it very clear that there was like very little chance I was going to be a pilot. So I got sidetracked for about 20 years or so. And then came back to it later. It was beginning just as a hobby when I was 33.
Okay.
And got a couple of ratings and thought, well, I was a would-be actor from the age of 20 to the age of 30. And so at that age, 31, I got married. 33, I took flying as a hobby. Got a couple of ratings and was deciding that it didn't look like my acting career was going anywhere fast. So I was looking for what I really wanted to do also to try to avoid working for the rest of my life.
In Fresno, did you have any exposure at all to growing up, like your family in aviation at all? Or?
Not really, no. I came from a poor, wrong side of the tracks, kind of family, and tried to go around the airports to work, as a line boy or whatever. And I was a little far away from the two airports that existed there. It would have taken a while to get there. And I got another job working, that was non-aviation related, so I didn't have much time to go to the airport. Okay. The only flight I took was at the end of that same high school course I took you about. They took us up on a discovery flight, which is, the 45-minute flight or whatever. Yeah. They took, though, 3 students, and we swapped seats. So we were actually up in the air for probably a couple hours. Ah. And in hindsight, it's kind of weird that I followed up on flying because it was a bumpy day, it was a hot day. And by the end of it, I didn't get airsick in the plane, but when I got back on the ground, I wasn't feeling very well. So
your first flight, you got sick.
But I still have always been intrigued by flying and the concept of being able to get in a plane and go somewhere. And, so when I learned to fly and took my first few lessons as a private pilot, it was in Los Angeles. The air was calmer. And,
okay.
So
okay.
It was more pleasurable.
Okay. And what high school did you go to that you're introduced to?
It was Roosevelt High School in Fresno. Yeah.
Okay. And it all came down to a math class then, huh?
That's kind of it. Yeah, probably. I think I don't know whether if I had not done that, I would have still had the interest. I might have, but it seemed to spur the interest, and it got me in the airplane the first time.
Yeah. And so you had that period where you were trying your acting career. How did you have the idea you wanted to go and get your pilot's license? And it's kind of a daunting task, right? And,
Well, it is involved, and it can be costly. For me, as a would-be actor, I gained experience in how to be a carpenter, a plumber, and many other jobs that I had done to try to support acting.
okay.
And so at the end of one of my work days, I strolled by the airport. There was a flight school at that time that a woman owned, and she also had an apartment building she needed to sell and repair. So we worked out a barter deal, and I worked, for her
Nice.
doing many different tasks in order to earn my private,
Okay.
because I didn't have the spare change laying around. And anyway, so that kind of made it simple to start as
Yeah.
a recreational pilot.
And what airport was that at?
Here
Santa
in
Monica?
Santa Monica, yeah.
Okay.
Right down the road. Claire Walters was her name.
Okay. Yeah, and I bet the airport's changed a lot since.
In
since
20
then.
years, it has, yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like, I remember all the old men when I was younger saying, oh, how things have changed. But yeah, it changed a lot. I mean, just in the nature of how it looks. There were airplanes parked in the lower area here. The Spitfire restaurant was a
Yeah.
flight school.
Okay.
And there were 3 large flight schools here at Santa Monica.
Mm.
All with about 15, 20 planes each,
Okay.
It was a much bigger part of business, I guess,
Okay.
here at the airport than it is now.
Now, was Donald Douglas, did they have any presence at that point?
No,
or
they
did
had left prior to that. I don't know exactly when their exit was, but it was well before. It was that year that I started, I guess 87, I think, when I started taking my first few lessons.
Okay.
And I don't know when their ending date was, but it was well before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you just started getting some ratings, got your private, and
Yeah.
thought you might want to move on to the instrument and commercial. And
Yeah, you get the private, and then very soon after that you realize that's only a recreational rating because you get weathered out and you can't really use it for reliable transportation. And so the instrument rating is a natural next thing to do, which now allows you to really go somewhere and kind of rely upon it to some degree, about 90%. There's still 10% of weather opportunity you'll stay on the ground. And then the commercial is actually not all that expensive compared to the other ratings, and so I got the commercial. And once you get the commercial, well, you're not that far from being a flight instructor, so that was kind of and I was looking for a different career.
okay.
My philosophy has always been that a life will be better if you find a kind of work that you will do for the rest of your life that you enjoy doing, because then you won't dread going to work.
Yeah.
And so
You enjoyed flying?
flying
so,
was very pleasurable. Working with people, teaching them something new was very pleasurable.
Okay.
So yeah, it was kind of a natural progression.
Okay. And during that whole time, then, were you still working for the there was the lady, right? Claire.
Well,
bartering
no,
to do that, or?
that deal worked for just the private.
Okay.
As it turned out, as I needed to do more ratings, there was some money that came my way
Okay.
that I was allowed to buy basically the other ratings.
Okay.
And so I managed to get through those in sort of a finance or career change move.
Were you thinking all along that you were thinking this could be a career, maybe being an instructor, or did you know from day one, I want a flight school?
Not really, no. And the flight school thing was not a plan. It kind of happened in a way.
Okay.
My plan was to get hours built up and probably be flying jets or corporate or something, or maybe even airlines. It was an open option as to see which opportunities availed themselves as I pursued it.
Okay.
And the flight school thing, all that happened was I was working for somebody else over at Van Nuys Airport, and wanted to come back to Santa Monica because I actually like Santa Monica as a work location better than Van Nuys. It's hot over there, and mostly the climate is good here, and there were at that time more people working here than there were over at Van Nuys doing pilot training.
Okay.
So one other gentleman I knew who was also a flight instructor, and another one, we got a small office here and started our own little business with a couple of airplanes.
Oh yeah.
And as it turns out, 2 of the large flight schools I talked about,
Yep.
within about 1 year, they both went belly up. bankrupt, basically.
Okay.
And so some of the business was at those locations came to us, along with planes that came to us that we put on lease back and managed.
Okay.
So there was one day, basically, went from a 2-airplane flight school to a 17-airplane flight school overnight. You know? When that happened and all that business came our way, it seemed like, well, this seems like an opportunity, you know. Maybe I can be a pilot and not have to go away every night and not spend all that time with my wife. So I figured, let's make a flight school try to work.
Okay.
You know, and it just kind of went that way.
Okay. And so this was in the late 80s then? 87?
Well, 87 I started. I wasn't really working at it till the early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was more like, we started the school around 90 or 91, about 20 years ago. So all of the other schools going out of business was 92, 93.
Okay. And then how did you and your partner come up with the idea? It was just kind of, hey, should we do this? Did you have a formal agreement, or how did you guys?
No, it was pretty informal.
Yeah.
You know, we had I was the one who was willing to put down the first amount of money to start it. So it had my name on it, but it was the one fella. It really came down to me and one other guy, and it was a 51-49 split because I was the one who paid the rent for the first 3 months.
Okay.
You know? So.
And was that pretty hard to take that leap to put the money out there? And
no, it really wasn't that much money.
Okay.
You know, the layout of Capital was kind of light because it was just renting a tiny little office, you know, that we could teach out of. The airplanes belonged to other individuals, you know, so there was a gentleman I kind of stumbled across who had built a flight simulator, and we got the LA FSDO to approve it for training because it actually was a pretty neat piece of equipment.
Okay.
The FAA changed their whole procedure on approving simulators shortly after we got that one approved.
Okay.
But so anyway, we had one of the newest and nicest simulators and a couple of decent planes, and that was with only the layout of the rent the first few times. So.
And for me, part of the thing that's intriguing about business owners and entrepreneurs is kind of how they meet their partners and how they decide to take that first step. And you know, were you actively out there looking for a business partner, or did that just kind of happen too?
It just kind of happened. I mean, we both worked at another place, so we were bumped into each other there. So you know, we both had, I think, some respect for each work ethic at that time, and things just came together. You know?
You guys are always talking on your lunch breaks or something, like, hey,
that
this might be kind of cool.
We both, he had worked and trained over here at Santa Monica as opposed to Van Nuys. We both talked about how we'd like to be over here more. The gentleman who we were working at his facility, which was, a flight school operation that kind of specialized in instrument training, he didn't manage his business, we thought, all that well. Okay. And we actually thought we could do it better. Okay. You know, so.
Gave it a shot then. Okay. And so then you open up here in Santa Monica. You have a little office. Where was that located at?
It was about 100 yards that way. Okay. The Kruger building.
Okay. Yeah, now it's
started with a small, little, tiny office, grew to 2 components of his office, grew to a bigger component, grew to a classroom upstairs. And when 9/11 happened, we basically had more office space than we do here, even, I think, or maybe equal to what we have here. Okay. But we had rent that was kind of high, and because we had so much space in somebody else's building. And so when 9/11 happened and airspace was shut down for a while, it became apparent that if that lasted very long, you know, we weren't going to be in business very long. So we slipped into another unit that dropped our rent $1,000 a month and moved into a little city office and operated there for a while before the city finally offered us this space.
And then I want to go back to how you acquired all those other airplanes when those other 2 companies went under. What, the early 90s, was it the bad economy then, that the other 2 places were just too big, a lot of overhead, they went under and you guys had the opportunity, or how did that play out?
Yeah, I don't think it was really a lack of business for flight schools. I think their planes were flying fairly regularly. In each case, I think it was just, well, number one, flight schools don't make a lot of money, so we all sort of operate on a very thin budget. Yeah. And I think in each of those other operations, they had ventured out and basically got upside down, and owed too much money.
Okay.
Couldn't pay their bills and filed bankruptcy.
Okay, just too leveraged.
Yeah, one I think opened a new operation at another airport, and the story was this operation was working fairly well, but that one wasn't, so it kind of drug it down. And the other one ventured into a larger space and had more rent with the city, and probably, had just too many debts.
Okay. Okay. And but you guys took the opportunity and gained from that, right?
Yeah. Well, in a sense, it didn't cost us anything to grow because we were managers of this other equipment that belonged to other people.
Okay.
And the way that works, of course, is we take a small piece, they get the bigger piece of the money, but they also get the risk,
Yeah.
We have at a maximum we own 3 planes. We since have had 2 that were sold, and we really own one of the planes that are out there.
Okay. Okay. And then how did you find out about that opportunity to manage those airplanes like that?
It kind of came to us, really.
Yeah.
I mean, when those other businesses closed, there were people at those businesses who knew of us.
Yeah.
And, at one time or another, I guess, of the few small businesses that existed, we had either more contacts or more respect or whatever, so they came our way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just kind of networking with everybody around the airport. And
kind of,
yeah. Okay. And so that was the early '90s. You guys took on, you had the opportunity to manage those other airplanes, and where'd you go from there?
Well, we just kind of, we grew at a maximum. I forget exactly what year was the maximum number of planes. We grew at one point up to about 28 or 30 planes.
Wow.
And then 9/11 happened, and business overall in aviation slowed down a bit, along with the economy a little bit. Shrunk down to, I think, about 20 planes, and then it kind of leveled off, and with the economic drop, down to about 17 planes. I think maybe 15 planes, back up to about 17 planes now. And business moves along at an even pace now. Seems to be picking up along with the rest of the economy.
Yeah.
So not dramatically so,
Yeah.
for the neighbors, and we deal with that, with the noise and
Yeah.
the neighbors and the complaints about the airport. They seem to be saying that, the airport is producing more noise than it used to. I think it's their sensibilities are more sensitive to it, perhaps, because the actual numbers of even our school, we're the only large flight school here. There used to be 3 our size.
Yeah.
And I get a printout because it's all on the computer, just how many hours did we do this year and that year. And basically, back in, I think what year was like 97 or something, we did something like 130,000 hours of flight time. And last year it was like 80,000 hours of flight time.
Okay.
So we're not doing more flying.
Yeah.
They hear it maybe more, but we're certainly not doing more.
Yep. And you think that's just the economy affects your business a lot then?
Yeah, it's that, and I have some other
spending.
suspicions. I mean, I think with the video game sort of generation out there, that the desire to go fly for a lot of youth is taken by the game, and you really don't have to get out of your chair. You really don't have to go pass a test that you might fail. All you have to do is sit there and play your video game, and I think that too is having an effect in the youth and how many people want to fly.
Okay.
I think we're getting further and further away from the image of the pilot as the war hero type, because there's less military flight going on. Smart bombs do the job of 10 planes. There's a lot of those things I think are going to have an effect on just the image of what a pilot is. And how many people will want to really achieve that goal and do the work that's necessary to get to that point.
Right. Yeah, and I could see that. It's funny how things change. But in a sense, though, that training on the computer, most airplanes might be drones in the future.
Yeah, there is the other side of it, too, that probably balances the story out a little bit, which is, as I mentioned before, when I was young, 90 to 95% of the pilots who flew for the airlines were all military trained. The military is training far, far less pilots. So the training that'll probably happen with propeller aircraft a lot may not be so much recreational, but it'll be a number of people wanting flying as a career, because now it's already shifted to well more than half of the pilots who flying airlines are not military trained, they're civilian trained. They come out of general aviation and move to the airlines.
Okay.
You know.
Do you train a lot of airline pilots through your school?
In the years that we've been in business, you know, I would say not necessarily because we do a higher percentage of like local people flying, but a lot of young people who maybe trained with us became flight instructors. Not a high percentage really, but there are at least 10 to 15 pilots who are airline pilots, and another 20 or 30 who are flying like Gulfstreams and corporate jets, you know, corporate stuff. Yeah.
Great. And you know, what's been the hardest part about owning your own business?
Well, the absolute hardest part is in 20 years of business, we've had 2 crashes, you know, that resulted in fatalities. That sucks the life out of you more than anything. The 20, you know, and we're talking hundreds of, as I mentioned, one year 100,000, 130,000 hours of flight time, and other years that much, and other years less. So 2 out of that much time, I mean, if we were renting cars, you know, that much, you know, most people would say, oh, you've only had 2 fatalities, that's not bad. You know, but still, it still sucks the life out of you. Whether there was one crash we didn't, actually in both crashes, oddly enough, that were fatalities, the people were from outside. We hadn't trained them. So thank God we can still say, you know, nobody we've trained has had an accident. You know, here, none of our flight instructors have died in an accident. And I hope we can say that all the way till we're out of this thing. But that's the hardest part. You know.
And what's been the best part about having your own business?
It's, you know, the sort of, I would say, the real, you know, pleasure you get from working with people who get a rating and they're so excited about it, and you can almost see them grow as a person, you know, as now they can do this great thing to go fly someplace and you know, get someplace twice or 3 times as fast as they would in a car, and it adds to the quality of their life tremendously, you know. And just sharing that with people is really, you know, I mean, I think it's the real reason I stay in it, you know, because quite honestly, you know, I flew charter a little bit because I had some instructors who worked together with me, and we formed a charter company, and I was flying skiers back and forth to Mammoth and doing a little bit of that kind of work. And there's an aspect of that I liked, you know, flying up the Sierra Nevadas on an early morning, just beautiful scenery. Some of the flights were a little scarier than I would have liked, but you know, there's some of that I like. And the challenge, that challenge of doing something new, going someplace else, the weather, the different airports, you know, that challenge I kind of miss because I pretty much know the LA area. It's kind of like I know most of the frequencies, you know. So anyway, all of that, the sharing of watching people do it, you know, that keeps me in it. And if it changes in the future, I mean, there's this guillotine that swings over Santa Monica Airport, you know, as far as when will this airport either close, or when will the city try to throw us all out of here or double our rents? We all don't know, you know, so we live with that.
That's pretty tough.
And if that happens, and I still am of an age where someone will hire me, you know, I might go fly somewhere else.
So with somebody that's thinking about starting their own business, and some people watching this today might not particularly have an idea to start a flight school, but if they're thinking about starting a business, how would you recommend somebody go about it, and maybe the planning aspect? And you know, as you said, there's a lot of kind of chance or non-planning that goes into it too. But somebody is thinking about taking that step from their 9-to-5 job that's very secure to taking a little risk and moving out to do something on their own. What would you recommend to them?
Well, you know, there's a few different thoughts. I should have been taking notes as you asked that question. Number one, it's not a little risk, it's a lot of risk. There's an old saying, it's probably around in a lot of businesses, but it's very, very true in aviation, is how do you make a large, how does it go? How do you make a small fortune in aviation? Start with a large one. that's why you say successful entrepreneur. At the end of my business, I'm not too sure I'm going to have anything, quite honestly. But, you know, my philosophy is perhaps a little bit more not so capitalist.
Yeah.
All you have is your time, and really your life is how you spent your time. That's true, you know. It's also true you'd like to make some money, so if your loved ones are not feeling well, you can pay for the doctor to come in and take care of them. That's true too, you know. I'm now almost 60, so I've had a good portion of my life doing something I like doing. In the long run, if I died, you know, tomorrow, I'd say, okay, it was a pretty good run for me. Yeah. And thank God I've got enough life insurance to give my wife a little money.
You got to do something you like to do, and if you get into something that you don't like to do and you're doing it just for the money, I don't think you're going to be good at it. And you're going to close up shop when things get tough, and everybody's going to go through some hard times, and it's too easy when you don't like what you're doing too. It's like, forget it, I'm out. I'm going to go work for somebody and have them deal with these headaches. But if you like it, and everybody still has those hard times, you can get through those hard times and say, look, well, what I really like doing day in and day out, there's things I don't like, problems, but day in and day out, I like, in your case, flying or, you know, seeing the Sierras early in the morning with some snow on them, and that'd be pretty amazing. And you know, and I totally agree with that. And I think, you know, to be a successful entrepreneur, that's, when I say successful, I don't mean money-wise too.
Yeah.
It's, you know, doing something you've liked to do, and you know, and you look back on it without any regrets.
Yeah, and in a sense, you think that so many people work so hard to experience like their vacations, you know, and say, okay, well, there's the joy of my life. A lot of my life has been similar to a vacation. You know? Sometimes it's on somebody else's tab, you know, it's just not quite the same.
So if somebody was thinking about getting their pilot's license, you know, what would you recommend to them too, just to get back to the flying a little bit?
Sure. There's a lot of things we can recommend. Of course, come on into a flight school, take a discovery flight, you know, see if you
and
really.
You guys do offer discovery flights, right?
Yeah.
Just
and those
short.
flights, those usually like 1 hour, a little slightly over an hour flights that are sold to a customer pretty much at cost, you know, but what they're paying for it is a reduced cost because, you know, we want to get the customer in. So it's kind of a form of advertising.
They actually get to fly during that first flight too, right?
Yep. And there's a lot of resources out there that are free on the FAA's webpage. You can download books that you used to have to pay for at the government printing office. The Flight Training Handbook, the Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. These are free books on the FAA's webpage. Just do a search for handbooks and you'll get those. And there's stuff on the internet now you can download, you know, and study and learn. And you know, and we get this every now and then. Aviation enthusiasts, young guys come in the door, and they've already learned a great deal. Anything you can do like that will save money. Anything you can do to save the amount of flight time.
You know, just in concluding remarks, you know, overall, if you had to do it all again, would you have started Justice Aviation and followed this path you're on?
I think so. I mean, I can dream of other pursuits that would have been perhaps more adventurous, traveling more around the world, that sort of thing, which I have a desire to. At the end of the story, I'll think, geez, I wish I would have done more of that. But I can also sort of see the downsides of some of that, you know. The time away from my own family, you know, would have been a sacrifice. So I have got to do aviation, which I love. I've got to spend time with my family, which also has a high value to me. So yeah, I think, you know, there'd be a definite rewind. For certainly a portion of my life, anyway.
And if anybody's interested in coming to Justice Aviation, do you have a website that they could visit?
We do, justiceaviation.com.
Okay.
It shows our planes and our instructors and, you know.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate your time.
Okay, Tony.